On the morning of April 8th, 2005, 6,300 workers arrived at Longbridge in Birmingham for what they thought was an ordinary Friday shift. By mid-afternoon, the production lines had frozen. Half-built cars sat untouched on the assembly line. Doors fitted to one side but not the other, wiring harnesses hanging loose. In the canteen, somewhere in that sprawling factory, a cup of tea was left on a workbench. Nobody came back to drink it. By evening, those 6,300 workers had been sent home. They would never return. 100 years of continuous production from 1905 to 2005 ended between one shift and the next. The silence that followed would reshape the West Midlands forever. But this was not a sudden collapse. It was the final act of a tragedy that had been unfolding for nearly 40 years. To understand how a national institution could die so completely, we have to go back to where it all began. In 1968, the British government made a decision that would echo through the decades. Prime Minister Harold Wilson and his Minister of Technology, Tony Benn, engineered a merger. They took the struggling British Motor Holdings, a company losing money on nearly every car it built, and forced it together with Leyland Motors, a profitable truck manufacturer run by Donald Stokes. On paper, the logic was unassailable. Combine these companies, the theory went, and you create a British General Motors. 48 factories, 168,000 employees, 40% of the UK car market. It looked like strength. It was the beginning of a slow-motion collision. The problem was not size. The problem was what had been stitched together inside that size. Austin and Morris had spent decades as bitter rivals, competing for the same customers with nearly identical cars. They had different suppliers, different cultures, different ways of doing almost everything. Now they were forced under one roof. Rover and Triumph occupied the same market segments, but built completely separate vehicles with no parts compatibility. Jaguar operated as a prestige brand that had nothing in common with the volume factories surrounding it. The merger did not resolve these tensions. It institutionalized them. Donald Stokes understood trucks. He had built Leyland Motors into a success through clear thinking and decisive management. But British Leyland was a different animal entirely, sprawling, political, resistant to change at every level. Stokes chose to manage it gently. He kept the brands separate to keep the peace. He avoided the difficult conversations about overcapacity. He told himself that growth would solve the problems that restructuring would have fixed. It would not. Years later, a journalist named Graham Turner would gain extraordinary access to the company's internal workings. He would write something damning. Stokes could have cut 40,000 redundant positions in the first 5 years without brutality. It would have saved £80 million a year in cash flow. It might have saved the company entirely. But in 1968, when British Leyland controlled 40% of the market and had the government's blessing, it was easy to believe the company was invincible. Nobody wants to fix something that does not look broken. The cracks came quickly. By 1972, market share had slipped from 40% to 33%. The merger that was supposed to create a champion had instead created a company that could not agree on what it wanted to be. In 1973, British Leyland launched the Austin Allegro. It was supposed to replace the beloved Austin 1100 and save the company. Instead, it became a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. The square steering wheel is the detail everyone remembers, a design choice so baffling that dealers retrofitted round wheels before delivery. But the steering wheel was the least of it. The car leaked water through poorly sealed windscreens. The hydrogas suspension system, innovative in theory, proved unreliable in practice and expensive to fix. Body panels aligned so poorly that you could see daylight through the gaps. It looked and felt like a car that nobody had owned. Harris Mann, the designer responsible for the Allegro's original concept, had drawn something quite different. What emerged from the committee rooms bore little relationship to that vision. Design decisions were overturned, engineering choices were reversed. Mann would later say he barely recognized the car that bore his name. British Leyland was not producing isolated failures, it was producing failure systematically. The company was even losing money on every Mini it built. Production costs exceeded the selling price. Meanwhile, Japanese manufacturers like Toyota and Datsun were entering the British market with vehicles that actually worked. They did not rust in 3 winters. They required half the warranty repairs of a British Leyland car. Customers who had been loyal for decades began asking a question they had never seriously asked before. Should I look at something foreign instead? By 1974, they were answering yes. The market was shifting beneath the company's feet. In November 1977, the government appointed a new chief executive. Michael Edwards was a South African businessman with a reputation for ruthlessness. He had no background in the car industry. He had no patience for the traditions that had calcified inside British Leyland. He arrived with a single objective: make the company viable by whatever means necessary. Edwards believed the union structure at Longbridge, with its dozens of shop stewards, its labyrinthine negotiations, and its capacity to bring production to a halt over grievances management considered trivial, was the primary obstacle to recovery. Derek Robinson, the communist shop steward at Longbridge, known as Red Robbo, believed Edwards's restructuring plan was an attack on working people. What followed was grinding attrition. Between 1977 and 1979, there were 523 disputes at Longbridge. The factory floor became a battleground. Every shift carried the possibility of a walkout. Every walkout carried the possibility of something worse. In November 1979, Edwards made his move. He called Robinson into a meeting and fired him for publishing a pamphlet critical of the recovery plan. Robinson walked out of Longbridge that evening with a cardboard box, and 36 years of service ended in an afternoon. The workforce walked out in protest, but then they voted. In a secret ballot, 14,000 workers voted against striking in Robinson's defense. The man the press had spent years portraying as the most powerful union figure in Britain had been abandoned by his own members. It was over. With Robinson gone, Edwards moved quickly. In 1980, the Metro arrived, modern, practical, genuinely better than what it replaced. The government declared recovery, but underneath the sales figures, the structural problems the merger had built into the company's foundations remained untouched. British Leyland had survived its confrontation with the unions. It hadn't survived itself. £3 billion of public money flowed in. Nationalisation, the politicians promised, would solve everything. It didn't. By the mid-1980s, it was clear to everyone inside the industry that British Leyland was in managed decline. The question wasn't whether it would survive. The question was how long the government could keep pretending it would. In 1986, the name British Leyland was quietly retired. The company became Rover Group, the old name carrying too much accumulated damage to be marketable. 2 years later, Margaret Thatcher's government sold Rover Group to British Aerospace for £150 million. For British Aerospace, a bargain. For the government, an exit. The problem had been relocated, not resolved. What came next represents the road not taken. Beginning in 1979, British Leyland had built a genuine partnership with Honda. It was unglamorous and pragmatic. The Triumph Acclaim came first, then the Rover 600, then the Rover 800, all built on shared platforms and Japanese engineering discipline. Over 15 years, Honda's influence was quietly transformative. Quality improved, reliability data moved in the right direction. By 1994, Honda held a 20% stake in Rover Group and believed it was building something sustainable. What Honda didn't know was that British Aerospace had been conducting quiet negotiations with BMW. When the sale was announced, Honda learned of it the way the public did, through the press. A right of first refusal that existed on paper had never been exercised. Honda terminated the partnership immediately. With it went the shared platforms, the engineering relationships, and the one structural prop keeping Rover's product pipeline viable. In 1994, British Aerospace sold Rover to BMW for £800 million. The Germans arrived with genuine ambition. What they discovered was worse than expected. The factories were outdated, the models were aging, and production costs far exceeded equivalent German plants. By 2000, BMW had decided they would keep the Mini and sell Land Rover to Ford. Longbridge would be handed to a consortium of 4 British businessmen for £10. Not 10 million, £10. BMW wanted out so completely they gave the factory away. John Towers walked through the gates with a promise and a press release. The Phoenix Consortium would save the company, he said. The workforce, exhausted and desperate, chose to believe him. For 5 years, they made cars using aging designs and no investment in new models. When the money ran out in 2005, it ended. The human cost was staggering. Longbridge had employed 25,000 workers at its peak. When it closed, 6,300 remained. 2/3 of displaced workers found jobs at lower pay. The West Midlands never fully recovered. The site was redeveloped into retail parks and housing. A Marks & Spencer now stands where cars were once assembled. A generation's livelihoods vanished between one shift and the next. British Leyland did not fail because workers were lazy or engineers incompetent. It failed because a government forced an incompatible merger for political optics. Because management chose appeasement over restructuring. Because no one could agree on what the company should be. The betrayal was systemic. Everyone had a hand in it. Today, every major car brand built in Britain is foreign-owned. BMW makes the Mini. Tata owns Jaguar Land Rover. Stellantis runs Vauxhall. As the electric vehicle transition reshapes global manufacturing, the question is not whether Britain can build competitive cars. It is whether Britain has the strategic independence to try. When you lose control of your manufacturing base, you lose control of your economic future. If your family worked at Longbridge, Cowley, or any of the plants we have covered here, share that story in the comments. If you worked on the line, if you were in management, if you watched this happen to your town, we want to hear it. These histories belong to the people who lived them, not just to documentaries. If you want to see more stories from British industrial heritage, drop a like on this video. Subscribe to Redundant Britain and hit the notification bell so you do not miss what comes next. We examine what went wrong so we understand what we lost and what might be worth saving. Thank you.